The connection between a Scorpio woman and Virgo man doesn't usually begin loudly. It builds slowly, quietly. Two people observing each other from a distance while pretending they're unaffected. The Scorpio woman becomes intrigued by how difficult the Virgo man is to fully read. Calm, controlled, intelligent, like there's always something he's holding back beneath the surface. And the Virgo man notices something in her as well, an emotional intensity that feels impossible to ignore, even when she says very little. What makes this pairing so powerful is that both signs are constantly analyzing each other while trying not to reveal too much themselves. So the connection turns psychological very quickly. Scorpio woman, Virgo man, let's talk about it. Chapter 1, The Silent Recognition. The Scorpio woman and Virgo man usually notice each other long before anything openly happens between them. This isn't typically a loud or impulsive connection. It begins through observation. The Virgo man notices how emotionally composed the Scorpio woman appears on the surface. There's something controlled about her intensity. She doesn't need constant attention or validation, and that immediately separates her from a lot of people in his eyes. Virgo men are naturally observant. They study people quietly before deciding how they feel about them. And Scorpio women tend to stand out because there's always something difficult to fully figure out about them. At the same time, the Scorpio woman becomes intrigued by the Virgo man's restraint. He isn't emotionally obvious, he doesn't reveal everything immediately. And there's a quiet intelligence about him that feels rare to her. And Scorpio women are naturally drawn toward hidden depth. What pulls these two together early on is the feeling that they're mentally operating on a similar wavelength. Both signs notice details other people miss. Both analyze people constantly. Both are cautious about vulnerability. So instead of rushing toward each other emotionally, they usually circle each other first. The attraction builds slowly through eye contact, conversations, and subtle awareness, a feeling that the other person somehow understands more than they say aloud. And once that feeling develops, the connection starts becoming difficult to ignore because neither the Scorpio woman nor Virgo man is usually looking for something shallow. What they're unconsciously searching for is depth. And from the very beginning, they tend to sense that in each other. Chapter 2, The Unspoken Attraction. As the Scorpio woman and Virgo man start interacting more, the attraction between them usually becomes obvious without either person directly admitting it. That's because both signs tend to express interest indirectly at first. The Virgo man becomes more attentive. He remembers small details about her, pays attention to her moods, starts quietly prioritizing her without making a dramatic display of it. And the Scorpio woman notices immediately. Scorpio women are extremely sensitive to shifts in attention and emotional energy. Even if the Virgo man says very little, she can usually feel when he's becoming emotionally invested. This is where the tension between them starts building. The eye contact becomes heavier, the conversations feel layered. Even ordinary moments begin carrying emotional weight neither fully understands yet. What makes this connection intense is that both people are naturally guarded. Virgo hides feelings through composure and overthinking. Scorpio hides feelings through silence and emotional control. So instead of openly expressing attraction, they begin trying to read each other instead. And in certain situations, this can create a prolonged emotional stalemate, an unspoken connection where both feel everything deeply, yet neither fully makes the first move. Chapter 3, On the Same Wavelength. One reason the Scorpio woman and Virgo man bond so deeply is because they often feel mentally connected before the relationship even becomes emotional. There's usually an immediate sense that the other person understands things most people overlook. The Virgo man notices how perceptive the Scorpio woman is. She picks up on emotional shifts quickly, reads between words, understands motives without needing everything explained directly, and the Scorpio woman notices something similar in him. Virgo men tend to observe quietly before speaking. They catch patterns, inconsistencies, and subtle behavioral changes other people completely miss. To Scorpio, that level of awareness feels rare. This is why conversations between them can feel unusually intense very early on. Even casual discussions start becoming deeper than expected. A simple joke turns into emotional subtext. A normal conversation suddenly feels personal and psychologically revealing. What strengthens this connection even more is that both signs secretly dislike superficiality. Neither person wants forced interactions or shallow emotional exchanges. They want meaning, depth, authenticity, and when they find someone who seems emotionally and mentally layered, they become attached much faster than they intended to. There's also often a strong sense of comfort between them, not because the relationship is easy, but because both feel strangely understood. The Scorpio woman feels less emotionally alone around the Virgo man, and the Virgo man feels less mentally disconnected around the Scorpio woman. That feeling becomes addictive for both of them because for two people who spend much of their lives feeling misunderstood by others, finally encountering someone who naturally gets them can feel almost impossible to walk away from emotionally. Chapter 4: Why Scorpio Becomes Fixated on Virgo. The Scorpio woman usually doesn't become deeply interested in someone unless she senses substance beneath the surface, and that's exactly what draws her toward the Virgo man. At first, he may appear calm, logical, and emotionally controlled, but the more she observes him, the more she realizes there's far more happening internally than he lets people see. That mystery becomes difficult for her to ignore. Virgo men rarely reveal themselves all at once. They tend to hold emotions in, overthink their feelings, and carefully choose what parts of themselves they expose to others. To many people, that can make Virgo seem distant. But to a Scorpio woman, it feels intriguing because Scorpio women are naturally drawn toward emotional depth that isn't immediately accessible. They want to understand what someone hides beneath composure, what they suppress, what they struggle to say out loud. And Virgo men often carry far more emotional complexity than people realize. This is where the Scorpio woman can start becoming emotionally fixated. She begins analyzing the Virgo man constantly, trying to figure out what he truly feels, watching for subtle signs of vulnerability or attachment. The more emotionally restrained he becomes, the more she may feel pulled toward uncovering what exists underneath. Chapter 5: Why Virgo Cannot Let Scorpio Go. While the Scorpio woman is trying to understand the Virgo man emotionally, the Virgo man is usually becoming far more affected by her than he expected because Scorpio women tend to leave a psychological impact on Virgo men that lingers long after interactions end. Part of this is because Virgo men are constantly analyzing people. They notice behavior, emotional patterns, inconsistencies, and most of the time they can eventually figure people out. But Scorpio women are different. There's always another layer beneath the surface, another emotion hidden behind silence, another part of her he hasn't fully unlocked yet. That keeps the Virgo man mentally invested. At the same time, Scorpio women tend to awaken emotions. Virgo men usually keep tightly controlled. The emotional intensity, the eye contact, the feeling of being deeply seen and understood, it pushes Virgo out of pure logic and into emotional territory that feels difficult to organize mentally. And once Virgo becomes emotionally attached, he rarely disconnects quickly. Even if he appears calm externally, he tends to replay interactions repeatedly in his head, analyzing conversations, wondering what certain moments meant, trying to understand whether the connection is truly as deep as it feels. Virgo often internalizes all of this instead of openly expressing it. That's why the Scorpio woman may sometimes misread him as emotionally detached when he's actually deeply consumed mentally. Chapter 6: The Emotional Push and Pull. One of the most misunderstood parts of the Scorpio woman and Virgo man connection is that both people are usually feeling far more than they openly show. But because they express emotions so differently, they can easily start misreading each other. Scorpio woman tends to approach connection through emotional intuition. She notices shifts quickly, changes in tone, energy, consistency, attention, and when something feels different, she immediately starts trying to understand why. Meanwhile, the Virgo man approaches relationships through observation and careful evaluation. Even when he feels strongly about someone, he usually takes time deciding what the connection truly means to him long term, not because he's playing games, but because Virgo men genuinely hate wasting time. They tend to view relationships seriously from the start. So instead of rushing emotionally, they analyze compatibility, emotional stability, and whether the relationship realistically fits into the life they're trying to build. This can accidentally create a push pull dynamic between them. The Scorpio woman may interpret the Virgo man's caution as emotional inconsistency or uncertainty, while the Virgo man may interpret Scorpio's emotional intensity as pressure before he's fully processed his own feelings. But in reality, both are usually trying to protect themselves in different ways. The Scorpio woman doesn't want shallow investment or emotional ambiguity. And the Virgo man doesn't want to open himself emotionally until he feels sure the connection is genuine and sustainable. What complicates things further is that Virgo's affection often appears subtle at first. He may not constantly verbalize feelings early on, but he starts showing care through consistency, time, effort, helpfulness, and quiet attentiveness. And Scorpio's affection can feel equally intense in a different way through emotional presence, loyalty, depth, and strong mutual focus. When these two stop assuming the worst about each other's differences, the connection usually becomes much smoother. Because underneath the misunderstandings, both are often searching for the exact same thing: something real, stable, and emotionally meaningful. Chapter 7: The Psychological Attachment. At a certain point, the connection between a Scorpio woman and Virgo man stops feeling casual altogether. It becomes something both people carry mentally even when they're apart. This is because both signs are naturally obsessive in different ways. Scorpio becomes emotionally fixated. Virgo becomes mentally preoccupied, and together that creates a bond that can feel incredibly difficult to fully detach from. The Scorpio woman starts noticing every subtle shift in the Virgo man's behavior: the way he sounds when he's stressed, the moments he becomes emotionally distant, the difference between when he's guarded versus genuinely overwhelmed. Meanwhile, the Virgo man is doing the same thing internally. He remembers small details about her constantly: conversations, emotional reactions, specific moments that seemed insignificant at the time but continue replaying in his mind later. Because Virgo men rarely forget emotional experiences that affected them deeply, and Scorpio women rarely forget emotional connections that felt psychologically meaningful. That's why this relationship can start feeling emotionally consuming for both people. Even silence between them begins carrying emotional weight. A short interaction can linger in their minds for days. Distance doesn't necessarily weaken the attachment, sometimes it intensifies it. But this is also where the relationship can become emotionally dangerous if neither person communicates openly. The Scorpio woman may start assuming the Virgo man should instinctively understand her emotions without explanation. The Virgo man may assume withdrawing quietly is better than creating conflict. Over time, those unspoken emotions can build into resentment, confusion, and emotional exhaustion because despite how naturally connected these two feel mentally, they still have to learn how to communicate vulnerability directly. Otherwise, the relationship risks becoming emotionally heavy instead of emotionally healing. Chapter 8: The Dark Side of This Pairing. The same emotional depth that makes the Scorpio woman and Virgo man connection powerful can also become the very thing that damages it. Because when this relationship turns unhealthy, both signs can slowly bring out each other's worst emotional habits. The Scorpio woman may become more emotionally intense when she feels insecure or uncertain. Instead of directly expressing fear or vulnerability, she may test the Virgo man emotionally to see how much he cares, pulling away suddenly, becoming colder, trying to provoke reassurance or emotional pursuit. But Virgo men usually respond very poorly to emotional games. Virgo values honesty, stability, and emotional consistency. So when the relationship starts feeling psychologically manipulative or emotionally unpredictable, the Virgo man may begin emotionally shutting down instead of fighting harder for the connection. And that withdrawal can deeply trigger Scorpio because once Scorpio senses emotional distance, she often starts analyzing everything obsessively. Small behavioral changes suddenly feel significant. Silence starts feeling personal. Meanwhile, instead of openly expressing frustration, the Virgo man may internalize resentment until he quietly pulls away altogether. This creates one of the biggest dangers in this pairing. Both people care deeply, but both can struggle to express hurt in healthy ways. Scorpio may react emotionally, Virgo may retreat mentally, and over time, the relationship can become filled with misunderstandings, assumptions, and emotional exhaustion if neither person learns to communicate directly. Because despite how strong the connection feels, emotional depth alone is not enough to sustain a relationship. Without trust, honesty, and emotional maturity, this pairing can slowly turn from healing into psychologically draining for both people. Chapter 9: Who feels this connection the strongest? One reason the Scorpio woman and Virgo man connection becomes so emotionally consuming is because both signs experience attachment very deeply, just in completely different ways. And depending on their emotional maturity and astrological placements, either person can end up feeling the connection more intensely. The Scorpio woman often feels the emotional and energetic side of the bond first. Scorpio is naturally intuitive and emotionally penetrating, so she tends to sense psychological chemistry very quickly. If she has heavy water placements, especially Scorpio, Cancer, or Pisces moons or Venus placements, the connection can start feeling emotionally profound almost immediately. She may become deeply attached to the emotional depth the unspoken understanding, and the feeling that the Virgo man sees parts of her other people miss. But the Virgo man often feels the connection in a quieter, more internalized way. Virgo men may not immediately express emotional intensity outwardly, but once someone enters their mental and emotional world deeply, they can become incredibly attached over time. Especially if he has water placements himself, a Virgo man with a Scorpio moon, Pisces moon, Cancer moon, or Scorpio Venus often experiences this connection far more intensely than he initially expected. He may appear composed externally while privately replaying conversations, analyzing interactions, and carrying the emotional attachment internally for years. This is why the connection can become confusing from the outside. The Scorpio woman may appear emotionally more intense initially because she expresses emotional depth more naturally. Meanwhile, the Virgo man may look calmer and more controlled while internally becoming just as psychologically attached. Earth and water placements together tend to intensify this pairing even more. The Virgo man provides grounding for Scorpio's emotional intensity. The Scorpio woman pulls Virgo deeper into emotional vulnerability and psychological depth. And when both charts contain strong fixed or water energy, the attachment can become extremely difficult for either person to fully let go of, because at its strongest, this connection doesn't just feel romantic, it feels psychologically and emotionally imprinted into both people over time. Closing. The Scorpio woman and Virgo man connection is rarely loud in the beginning. It starts quietly, two people studying each other while pretending they aren't affected. But over time, the connection becomes much deeper than either of them expected, because this pairing isn't built on surface level attraction alone. It's built on observation, emotional depth, psychological attachment, and the feeling of being understood in ways that are hard to explain to other people. And that's exactly why it can become so intense. The Scorpio woman sees someone emotionally restrained but deeply layered beneath the surface. The Virgo man sees someone emotionally powerful, perceptive, and impossible to forget. But this relationship also forces both people to confront themselves. Scorpio has to learn that love cannot survive through fear, emotional testing, or silent assumptions. Virgo has to learn that emotional safety requires vulnerability, not just control and composure. And when both fail to communicate openly, the connection can slowly become painful instead of healing. But when both people grow emotionally, this pairing can become incredibly loyal, intimate, and lasting. Because underneath all the complexity, both signs are searching for the same thing: someone real, someone emotionally genuine, someone they can trust deeply enough to finally let their guard down with. And when a Scorpio woman and Virgo man find that in each other, it becomes a connection neither of them ever fully forgets.